Hey everyone. Before we dive in, I want to ask, where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories reach. And if you enjoy heartfelt, real-life stories like this, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps us share these moments with more people who might need a little connection tonight. Now, let me tell you about something that happened to me recently. Something that caught me completely off guard, but ended up being a deeply meaningful evening. It was one of those quiet Friday nights when the world outside seemed to slow down just enough for me to breathe. I had my living room softly lit, the amber glow of a small lamp spilling across the couch, and a faint scent of vanilla from a candle I'd lit earlier. I'd planned a simple Netflix night for myself, the kind where I wrap up in a blanket and let the outside fade away. My phone buzzed earlier with a few messages from my brother, but I didn't expect anyone else to show up. Then there he was, my brother's son, Danny. I hadn't seen him in months, not since his summer break ended and life got busy for both of us. He walked in quietly, a little hesitant, carrying that mix of teenage confidence and underlying uncertainty that I've always noticed in him. "Hey, can I hang out for a bit?" he asked. There was something different in his voice, something that made me pause. Usually he's joking around, teasing, or absorbed in his phone. But tonight, there was a softness, almost like he was carrying a weight he didn't know how to put down. I patted the couch beside me. "Of course, come sit. We're just about to start a movie." He slid in, careful not to disturb the blanket I'd arranged over the cushions, and settled in as if he was both part of the room and separate from it. There was an awkward silence at first, that delicate sort of tension that exists when two people know there's something unsaid but aren't ready to speak it yet. We clicked play, but instead of focusing on the screen, I noticed how he seemed smaller somehow, not physically but in spirit. His shoulders slumped slightly, and his hands fidgeted with the edge of the blanket. I remembered times when he'd laughed freely at my jokes or challenged me to board games, and this quietness felt new and fragile. I wanted to reach out, to break the invisible barrier, but I also knew better than to force words. Some things only open in their own time. Halfway through the first episode, he finally shifted, clearing his throat. I've been having a rough week," he admitted quietly. My heart squeezed a little because I recognized that voice, the one that shows up when someone trusts you enough to let a little of their world in. "Want to talk about it?" I asked, keeping my tone gentle, casual, as if the room itself were offering comfort. He nodded slowly and began to speak, first in fragments, then in more coherent thoughts. He told me about pressures at school, worries about friends, and feelings he couldn't quite name, but knew were heavy. I listened, really listened, offering small nods, the occasional "I understand," and letting silence fill the spaces where words weren't ready. The TV continued to play in the background, its bright scenes now serving more as a comforting hum than a distraction. As he talked, I found myself realizing how rare these moments were, the chance to simply be present for someone without judgment, without rushing toward advice or solutions. We shared stories of our own small struggles, laughing quietly at some, nodding solemnly at others, building a quiet bridge of understanding. It was surprising how intimate a simple evening could become when two people were willing to sit together and open up. By the time the credits rolled on the show, the tension that had sat between us seemed to ease, replaced with a new kind of closeness. He smiled, genuine and a little lighter than before, and I felt that warm, unspoken acknowledgement of trust. We didn't need grand declarations. The quiet comfort of the shared space said enough. When he finally got up to leave, he paused at the doorway. "Thanks," he said softly, and for the first time that evening, I felt like maybe he believed it. Watching him walk out, I sank back into the couch and realized that the best kind of connection sometimes comes in the smallest, simplest packages: a shared blanket, a quiet night, and the courage to just say what's inside. And that's how a regular Friday night turned into one of the most unexpectedly meaningful evenings I've had in a long time. After that night, I kept thinking about Danny and how unusual it was to see him so open. He wasn't the type to share his feelings easily. He'd always been a mix of humor and quiet observation, the kind of person who carried a lot inside without letting it show. I wondered if he felt lighter now, or if it was just a brief reprieve before life pressed back in. A few days later, he called me out of the blue. "Hey, do you want to come over tonight?" His voice had that same hesitant edge from the other evening, and I could hear the subtle uncertainty behind it. I agreed without hesitation, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and warmth. I knew whatever this was turning into, it wasn't just about a Netflix night anymore. It was about him trusting me to be there. When I arrived, the house smelled faintly of popcorn and the lingering scent of the candles he'd borrowed from my place last time. Danny had the living room arranged differently this time. He had pillows stacked neatly against the couch and a soft throw draped over the armrest. It was as if he was creating a space that could hold both of us comfortably, a little sanctuary away from the usual noise of the week. We sat down side by side and started the movie, but the silence between us was different this time. It wasn't awkward, it was expectant, like both of us knew that words would come eventually but didn't need to rush. And then he turned slightly toward me, hesitating before he said, "I've been thinking a lot about what I told you the other night." I smiled softly. "I'm glad you felt you could tell me." My tone was light, but inside, I felt that familiar tug of connection, that quiet satisfaction of knowing someone trusted you enough to share what they couldn't say anywhere else. He nodded, fiddling with the corner of a pillow. It helped, more than I expected, but I realized I don't always understand why I feel the way I do. And it's scary. His voice cracked just a little, and I realized he was allowing himself to be vulnerable in a way that wasn't easy for him. We spent the next hour talking in fits and starts. He spoke about the pressures of expectations, the sense of isolation he sometimes felt even among friends, and the small victories that seemed to go unnoticed. I shared stories of my own experiences at his age, the mistakes, the moments of doubt, and the quiet lessons learned. There was laughter, yes, but also long pauses where just being in each other's company felt enough. At one point, he leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "I don't know why I feel like this sometimes. I guess I just need someone to listen without telling me what to do." I nodded, feeling a swell of respect for his honesty. I understand. Sometimes, just having someone there makes all the difference. The evening drew on, and the movie played mostly in the background. What mattered wasn't the show. It was the rhythm of our conversation, the ebb and flow of shared understanding, the silent reassurance that neither of us was alone in our experiences. He seemed lighter, though not completely unburdened, and I felt a quiet satisfaction in simply being present. Before I left, Danny turned to me with a soft smile. "Thanks for tonight. I really mean it." And I could tell it wasn't just politeness. It was genuine, from a place deep inside that rarely spoke out loud. Walking back to my car, I reflected on how rare it was to witness someone slowly opening their heart, to see trust being built one small moment at a time. That night, I realized something important. Connection doesn't always come in big gestures or dramatic moments. Sometimes it arrives quietly, between two people willing to sit, listen, and simply be there for one another. And Danny, well, he was teaching me as much about patience, empathy, and understanding as I was offering him in return. It was clear now that these nights weren't just a one-time thing. They were becoming a space where both of us could explore, share, and grow. And I couldn't help but look forward to the next time he would need to open up, because by now, I knew I'd be there, ready to listen. A week later, Danny showed up again, this time with a little more confidence in his step, but I could still sense that under it, some of the uncertainty lingered. The moment he walked in, I noticed he had a notebook tucked under his arm. "I thought maybe we could just talk again," he said, a quiet invitation rather than a request. I smiled and gestured to the couch. Absolutely. Let's make it our little corner tonight. The living room felt warmer than usual, the soft glow of the lamp highlighting the textures of the throw and cushions. Outside, the wind rustled gently against the window pane, a soothing background to the quiet rhythm of our evening. We started the movie, but as usual, the film was secondary. Danny opened his notebook and began reading fragments of thoughts he'd written down, small reflections on school, friendships, and the way he sometimes felt misunderstood. Listening to him read, I realized how much he was trusting me, not just with his words, but with the rawness behind them. There was honesty in his writing that he didn't always speak aloud, and hearing it allowed me to see him in a way that went beyond the surface. These are really thoughtful, I said, trying to sound casual, but meaning every word. You're reflecting on things that even adults struggle to understand. He looked down, a small, shy smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. I guess I just wanted to make sense of it somehow. Writing it helps, but talking to you feels different. Like it's not just words on paper. It's real. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection. That was the moment I understood that these evenings weren't just about support. They were becoming a shared journey, a mutual discovery of trust and understanding. As the movie played quietly in the background, he asked me questions about my life at his age, the mistakes I'd made, and the lessons I'd learned. I answered honestly, sharing the kind of stories that weren't glamorous or impressive, just human. The kind of stories that show vulnerability can be a strength. He listened intently, occasionally glancing at the notebook as if making mental notes for his own reflections. At one point, he paused and said, I never thought adults could be like this. Calm, patient, and really listening. I laughed softly. Most of us forget how important it is to listen. But sometimes when someone takes the time to sit with you, without judging, it changes everything. I could see him absorbing that, letting the words sink in. The night deepened, and the conversation grew quieter, more introspective. We spoke about hopes and fears, about the little victories that often go unnoticed, and about the people who quietly shape us without even realizing it. I realized that this was more than just a night to unwind. It was a space where both of us could confront small truths, express emotions, and reflect on life in a way that felt safe and meaningful. Before he left, he turned to me and said, You know, I feel lighter when I come here. I didn't think I'd ever say this, but I'm glad I can be honest with you. I smiled warmly, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. I'm glad too. You should never feel like you have to carry everything alone. Driving home, I reflected on how remarkable it was to witness his growth, even in these small moments. There was a beauty in watching someone discover the power of opening up, and it reminded me that human connection isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up, being present, and offering a safe space for someone to explore their emotions. By now, it was clear that these nights were more than just casual visits. They were becoming a rhythm, a place where understanding and trust could flourish. And as I thought about our conversations, I realized that I was learning just as much as he was, about patience, about empathy, and about the quiet power of being truly present for someone who needs it. And in that realization, I felt a warmth that stayed with me long after the door closed, a quiet promise that these evenings weren't just about talking. They were about growing together. A few nights later, Danny came over again, but this time there was something different in his demeanor. He walked in with a quiet confidence, but I could sense a subtle tension under the surface, like he was carrying something he had been wrestling with for days. I gestured to the couch as usual, and he slid in beside me, the familiar rhythm of our evenings settling around us. We started the movie, but as I expected, it wasn't the movie that captured our attention. Danny hesitated for a moment, then said, I've been thinking about everything we've talked about school, friends, me. His voice was soft but steady, as if he had finally gathered the courage to confront some of the feelings he had been holding back. I turned slightly toward him. "I'm listening," I said simply, letting the words be an invitation rather than a prompt. He sighed, leaning back against the cushions. "I guess. I've realized that I've been trying to handle things on my own because I thought that was how I was supposed to. But talking to you, it's made me see that it's okay to share, to ask for help without feeling weak." I felt a lump in my throat, a mix of pride and deep emotional connection. This was the moment I had been waiting for, not just him opening up, but him understanding the value of doing so. We spent the next hour in quiet conversation, weaving between lighthearted stories and deeper reflections. He shared things he hadn't even put into words before, small fears and hopes that revealed how much he was growing, how much trust he had built in such a short time. I shared more of my own experiences, trying to show him that everyone struggles, and that acknowledging those struggles doesn't make us lesser. It makes us human. At one point, he paused, staring at the flickering light from the TV. "I feel different," he admitted. "Not like everything is solved, but lighter. Like I can breathe a little more freely." I nodded, smiling, because I understood that feeling, the relief that comes from being heard and accepted. "That's exactly it," I said softly. "Sometimes the smallest gestures, like just being here together, make the biggest difference." The evening grew late, and a calm silence settled over the room. We didn't need to fill it with words. The shared understanding between us was enough, the quiet acknowledgement that we had created a space where honesty and trust could thrive. When it was finally time for him to leave, he stood at the doorway for a moment longer than usual. "Thank you for everything," he said, and I knew it was more than politeness. It was genuine gratitude, born from a deep emotional connection. I smiled warmly, feeling a sense of fulfillment I hadn't anticipated at the start of all this. "You don't have to thank me. I'm proud of you, Danny, and I'll always be here." Watching him walk away, I reflected on how extraordinary these evenings had been. What started as a simple Netflix night had transformed into a series of moments where two people, different in age but alike in heart, could explore emotions, share fears, and grow together. It was a reminder that human connection doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's the quiet, patient presence that matters most. As I settled back into my chair, the glow from the lamp soft against the walls, I realized that these nights had changed me too. They had reminded me of the importance of listening, of being present, and of valuing the trust someone places in you. Danny had needed to open up, and in doing so, he had opened a door for both of us to understand the power of empathy, patience, and connection. I knew there would be more conversations, more nights of shared stories and quiet reflection. And I also knew that these simple, unassuming evenings were some of the most meaningful moments I had ever experienced. They were a reminder that sometimes the most profound growth comes not from grand gestures, but from the willingness to sit together, to listen, and to let someone know they are not alone. And in that realization, I felt a deep, lasting warmth, a quiet joy in knowing that trust and connection, once nurtured, could carry both of us forward in ways neither of us could have imagined at the start.